slam of the apartment door echoed in Olivia's ears, a final brutal punctuation mark on the argument that had just ripped through the small living room. Her older sister Clara stood on the other side, her face a mask of cold fury, the deadbolt clicking home with a finality that sent a shiver down Olivia's spine. Just minutes ago, they'd been bickering over something trivial, whose turn it was to do the dishes, the volume of Olivia's music. The usual sibling squabbles, amplified by the cramped space they shared in their tiny two-bedroom apartment. But then, Clara's tone had shifted, her eyes hardening with an intensity Olivia had rarely seen. "That's it, Olivia," Clara had declared, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "I can't do this anymore. You need to leave." Olivia had stared at her, dumbfounded. "Leave? What are you talking about?" Clara had crossed her arms, her expression unyielding. "I'm talking about you moving out. I want you gone by the end of the week." The words had hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Olivia had felt a surge of disbelief, followed by a sharp stab of hurt. They had shared this apartment for 3 years, ever since Olivia had moved to the city for university. It wasn't always easy, but it was home, and Clara was her sister, her family. But why? Olivia had stammered, her voice trembling. Clara had simply shrugged, her gaze distant. "I just need my space, Olivia. I can't keep living like this." Her explanation felt flimsy, unconvincing. There had been no build-up to this, no serious discussions about Olivia moving out. It felt sudden, cruel, and utterly out of character for Clara, who, despite her occasional bossiness, had always been fiercely protective of Olivia. As Olivia stood in the hallway outside their apartment, clutching the small backpack containing the few belongings Clara had allowed her to take, a knot of suspicion tightened in her stomach. It wasn't just about needing space. Something else was going on. Clara had been acting strangely for the past few weeks. Secretive phone calls, hushed conversations in the other room, a nervous energy that Olivia couldn't quite place. Now, coupled with this abrupt eviction, a disturbing picture was starting to form in Olivia's mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that Clara was hiding something significant that had led to this drastic decision. The initial shock was beginning to wear off, replaced by a growing sense of unease and a flicker of anger. She wouldn't just accept this. She deserved an explanation, a real one, not some vague excuse about needing space. As she walked down the stairs, the weight of her backpack and the uncertainty of her immediate future pressing down on her, Olivia made a silent vow. She would find out what was really going on with Clara, even if it was the last thing she did. The streets of the city stretched out before her, a confusing maze of unfamiliar faces and bustling traffic. Olivia had nowhere to go. Her university dorm was closed for the summer break, and she didn't have any close friends in the city with enough space to take her in. A wave of loneliness washed over her, the suddenness of her displacement leaving her feeling adrift and vulnerable. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts, desperately searching for a lifeline. Her parents lived in another state, and she hesitated to call them. They would be worried sick, and she didn't want to burden them with her problems. Not yet, anyway. After a few moments of deliberation, she decided to call Liam, a classmate who had always been kind to her. He lived in a shared house a few blocks away from her apartment with Clara. Maybe he had a spare room, or at least he could offer her a couch for a night or two while she figured things out. Liam answered on the third ring, his voice cheerful. Olivia explained her situation, trying to keep her tone light despite the turmoil she was feeling. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "Olivia, I wish I could help," Liam said hesitantly, "but all the rooms here are full. Maybe try Sarah. She lives in the next building." Olivia thanked him, a little disappointed but understanding. She called Sarah, another classmate, but she was away for the summer, traveling abroad. With each failed attempt, Olivia's desperation grew. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the city streets, and the thought of spending the night alone and homeless was terrifying. Just as she was starting to lose hope, she remembered an old friend from high school, Maya, who had moved to the city a few months ago. They hadn't stayed in close contact, but Olivia knew Maya lived in a studio apartment not too far from her university. It was a long shot, but she had nothing to lose. Maya answered her call, her voice surprised but welcoming. Olivia explained her predicament, and to her relief, Maya immediately offered her a place to stay. "Of course, you can stay with me, Olivia. Don't worry about it. Come over now." A wave of relief washed over Olivia, so intense it almost brought her to tears. She thanked Maya profusely, her voice choked with emotion. Finally, a safe place to land. As she made her way to Maya's apartment, a small studio crammed with colorful artwork and overflowing bookshelves, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that her troubles were far from over. While she was grateful for Maya's generosity, she knew her current situation was only temporary. She needed to find a more permanent solution, and more importantly, she needed to understand why Clara had kicked her out. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that there was something more to the story than just Clara needing space. Clara had always been a creature of habit, predictable and somewhat risk-averse. This sudden, drastic action was completely out of character. Olivia remembered the hushed phone calls Clara had been having lately, always stepping out onto the fire escape to talk, her voice low and secretive. She also recalled the unusual visitors who had started coming to their apartment, people Olivia had never seen before, who would arrive late at night and leave before sunrise. Clara had always been vague about who they were, dismissing them as friends from work. But now, looking back, Olivia realized that their behavior had been suspicious. They had always seemed nervous, looking over their shoulders as if they were afraid of being seen. And then there was the money. Clara, who had always been careful with her finances, had suddenly started coming into large sums of cash. She had bought expensive new clothes, a fancy laptop, and had even started talking about taking a luxurious vacation. When Olivia had asked her where the money was coming from, Clara had been evasive, saying she had gotten a bonus at work. But Olivia knew Clara's job as a receptionist at a dental clinic didn't pay that well. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a disturbing picture in Olivia's mind. Could Clara be involved in something illegal? The thought sent a shiver of fear down Olivia's spine. She didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was mounting. The sudden eviction, the secretive behavior, the unexplained wealth. It all pointed to something more sinister than just a sister needing her space. As she settled into Maya's tiny apartment, the reality of her situation began to sink in. She was homeless, at least for the time being, and her relationship with her sister seemed to be why-rata beyond repair. But amidst the uncertainty and the hurt, a spark of determination ignited within Olivia. She wouldn't just sit back and let Clara dictate her life. She would find out what was going on, and if Clara was in trouble, Olivia would do everything she could to help her, even after everything that had happened. But first, she needed a plan. She needed to gather more information, to connect the dots and uncover the truth behind Clara's sudden and drastic actions. The first step was to try and talk to Clara again, to see if she could get her to open up, to tell her what was really going on. But Olivia knew that wouldn't be easy. Clara had been adamant about wanting her gone, and she had made it clear that she didn't want to talk about it. Olivia would have to be more strategic, more subtle. She would have to investigate. The next few days were a masterclass in amateur sleuthing for Olivia. Staying on Maya's cramped sofa, she felt a constant sense of displacement, a longing for the familiar comfort of her old apartment. But this discomfort fueled her determination to uncover the truth. Her first attempt to contact Clara directly was met with silence. Her calls went unanswered, and her text messages remained unread. It was as if Clara had completely cut her off. This only solidified Olivia's suspicion that something was seriously wrong. She decided to start by observing their old apartment building. She spent hours sitting in a nearby coffee shop, strategically positioned to have a clear view of the entrance. She watched as unfamiliar people came and went, the same nervous-looking individuals she had seen visiting Clara before. They would arrive at odd hours, often late at night, and stay for short periods. Their behavior was furtive, their eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Olivia noted their appearances, their cars, anything that might help her identify them later. She also started paying closer attention to the building itself. She noticed that the security camera in the lobby seemed to be malfunctioning, its lens covered with a piece of black tape. This struck her as odd. Clara had always been meticulous about security, constantly reminding Olivia to lock the door and never to let strangers into the building. Why would she allow the security camera to be tampered with? Olivia's suspicions grew darker. Could Clara be involved in something truly dangerous, something that required her to disable security measures? One evening, as Olivia was watching the building from the coffee shop, she saw a delivery truck pull up. Two men in plain clothes carried several large boxes into the building. Olivia couldn't see what was inside the boxes, but their size and the way the men handled them suggested they were heavy. She noted the name of the delivery company on the side of the truck and decided to look it up later. Back at Maya's apartment, Olivia spent hours online, researching the delivery company and trying to find any information about suspicious activities in their neighborhood. She also delved into online forums and crime websites, looking for patterns of behavior that matched what she had observed. The more she researched, the more worried she became. The late-night visitors, the tampered security camera, the heavy deliveries, it all pointed towards some kind of illegal operation. But what could Clara possibly be involved in? She had always been so cautious, so rule-abiding. Olivia struggled to reconcile the sister she knew with the image that was starting to form in her mind. Could she have gotten mixed up with the wrong people? Was she in danger? The thought terrified Olivia. Despite everything that had happened, despite the hurt and the anger, she still loved her sister. She couldn't bear the thought of Clara being involved in something that could put her in harm's way. Olivia knew she had to take action. She couldn't just sit back and watch, hoping that things would somehow work themselves out. She needed to find concrete evidence, something that would either confirm her suspicions or put her mind at ease. She decided to try a different approach. Instead of just observing the building, she would try to get inside. She knew the building superintendent, Mr. Henderson, a kind elderly man who lived on the first floor. Olivia had helped him with his groceries a few times, and they had always had friendly chats. She decided to pay him a visit, hoping he might have noticed something unusual going on in the building. She went to the apartment building the next morning, her heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Mr. Henderson answered the door, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Olivia, dear, what a surprise. Come in, come in." Olivia explained that she had forgotten a few things at her apartment and was hoping he could let her in. Mr. Henderson looked hesitant. "Well, dear, Clara specifically told me not to let anyone into the apartment without her permission." Olivia's heart sank. Even Mr. Henderson had been instructed to keep her out. This only confirmed her belief that Clara was hiding something. But Olivia didn't give up. She pleaded with Mr. Henderson, telling him that it was just a few personal items and that she wouldn't stay long. After a few moments of hesitation, Mr. Henderson relented. "All right, dear," he said with a sigh, "but just for a few minutes, and don't tell Clara I let you in." Olivia thanked him profusely and followed him up to their apartment. As Mr. Henderson unlocked the door, Olivia's senses were on high alert. The apartment looked the same as she remembered, but there was an underlying tension in the air, a feeling that something was amiss. She quickly gathered a few of her belongings, her eyes scanning the apartment for any clues. She noticed a faint, unusual smell in the air, something she couldn't quite identify. She also saw a small, black notebook tucked away on a shelf in Clara's room. It looked like a ledger of some sort. While Mr. Henderson was distracted in the living room, Olivia quickly slipped the notebook into her bag. She knew it was wrong to take it, but she felt like she had no other choice. This might be the key to understanding what Clara was really involved in. She thanked Mr. Henderson again and hurried out of the apartment, her heart pounding in her chest. Back at Myers, Olivia opened the notebook with trembling hands. Inside, she found pages filled with handwritten entries, numbers, and names she didn't recognize. It looked like some kind of transaction log. As she started to decipher the entries, a cold dread washed over her. The numbers were large, and the transactions were frequent. There were references to packages, deliveries, and collections. The names listed were all aliases, with code names and cryptic notations. It didn't take Olivia long to realize what she was looking at. This was a drug ledger. Clara was involved in drug trafficking. The realization hit Olivia like a physical blow, leaving her feeling sick and dizzy. Her sister, her responsible, rule-abiding older sister, was a drug dealer. The pieces of the puzzle finally clicked into place. The secretive phone calls, the late-night visitors, the tampered security camera, the heavy deliveries, the unexplained wealth, and the sudden eviction. Clara had kicked her out to keep her from finding out about her illegal activities. Olivia felt a wave of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and a deep sense of betrayal. How could Clara have done this? How could she have put herself in so much danger? And how could she have kept such a huge secret from Olivia? Despite her anger and hurt, Olivia couldn't just stand by and let Clara continue down this path. She knew that drug trafficking was a dangerous business, and Clara was playing with fire. She could end up in prison, or worse. Olivia knew she had to do something, but she wasn't sure what. Should she confront Clara again, even though she had made it clear she didn't want to talk? Should she go to the police? The thought of reporting her own sister to the authorities was agonizing, but Olivia knew that Clara's actions were not only illegal, but also incredibly risky. She needed to protect Clara, even if it meant making a difficult and painful decision. Olivia spent the rest of the day wrestling with her conscience, torn between her loyalty to her sister and her sense of right and wrong. She knew that whatever she decided to do, it would have significant consequences for both of them. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. She looked at the drug ledger again, the stark evidence of Clara's double life staring back at her. She knew she couldn't ignore it. She had to act, and she had to act soon. The weight of the decision pressed down on Olivia, a suffocating burden that made it hard to breathe. The drug ledger lay open on Maya's small kitchen table, the handwritten entries a stark testament to Clara's dangerous secret. Olivia spent the night tossing and turning on Maya's uncomfortable sofa, her mind racing, replaying memories of her sister, trying to reconcile the Clara she knew with the criminal she had become. There were moments of fierce anger, a burning resentment at Clara's betrayal of their bond, her willingness to put them both at risk. But those moments were quickly followed by waves of fear and worry. What if Clara was in danger? What if she was in too deep? The thought of her sister facing prison time or worse sent a chill down Olivia's spine. She knew she had to do something, but the question of what haunted her. Confronting Clara again seemed futile. Her sister had made it clear she wanted Olivia out of her life, and Olivia doubted she would be willing to listen to reason, especially now that her secret was out. Going to the police felt like the ultimate betrayal, a final severing of their already strained relationship. But could she, in good conscience, stand by and watch Clara destroy her life? The internal conflict raged within Olivia, tearing her apart. She confided in Maya, showing her the ledger and explaining her dilemma. Maya listened patiently, offering words of support but refraining from giving direct advice. She knew this was a decision Olivia had to make on her own. The next morning, Olivia made her choice. She couldn't ignore what she knew. She couldn't pretend that everything was okay. She had to do what she believed was right, even if it meant hurting Clara in the short term. She decided to go to the police. With a heavy heart, Olivia walked into the local police station and asked to speak to an officer. She explained her situation, her voice trembling as she recounted the events of the past few days and presented the drug ledger as evidence. The officer listened intently, his expression growing increasingly serious as Olivia spoke. He took possession of the ledger and assured Olivia that they would launch an investigation immediately. Olivia left the police station feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. She had done what she felt she had to do, but the thought of what would happen to Clara weighed heavily on her mind. She knew her sister would be furious with her, that their relationship might never recover. But she also hoped that this intervention would ultimately help Clara, that it would be a wake-up call that would lead her to turn her life around. The following days were filled with anxiety and uncertainty. Olivia stayed at Maya's, constantly checking her phone for news. She tried to distract herself with job applications and apartment searches, but her thoughts kept returning to Clara and the investigation. A few days later, Olivia received a call from the police. They had raided her and Clara's apartment and had found a significant quantity of illegal drugs and drug paraphernalia. Clara had been arrested. Olivia's heart sank when she heard the news. While she had expected this outcome, the reality of it was still a shock. Her sister was in jail. A wave of sadness washed over Olivia, a deep sense of loss for the sister she had once known. She went to the police station to give a formal statement, recounting everything she knew about Clara's activities. The officers were grateful for her cooperation and assured her that they would handle the case with sensitivity. Olivia didn't visit Clara in jail immediately. She needed time to process everything that had happened, to come to terms with the fact that her sister had made such destructive choices. She knew Clara would likely be angry and resentful towards her, and Olivia wasn't sure she was ready to face that. Instead, she focused on getting her own life back on track. She found a small, affordable room to rent in a shared house and started working part-time at a local cafe. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As the weeks passed, Olivia slowly began to heal. The pain of Clara's betrayal and the sadness of her situation didn't disappear entirely, but they became less sharp, less consuming. She started to focus on her own future, on building a life for herself independent of her sister. One day, Olivia received a letter from Clara. It was the first communication she had had since Clara's arrest. Olivia hesitated for a long time before opening it. She didn't know what to expect. Would Clara be filled with anger and accusations? Or would she finally acknowledge the consequences of her actions? With trembling hands, Olivia unfolded the letter and began to read. Clara's handwriting was shaky and the words were filled with a mixture of regret, anger, and a hint of understanding. She expressed her hurt and betrayal at Olivia's decision to go to the police. But she also admitted that she knew, deep down, that she had been heading down a dangerous path. She wrote about the fear and paranoia that had consumed her during her involvement with the drug trade, and she acknowledged that her actions had not only put herself at risk, but had also deeply hurt Olivia. The letter wasn't an outright apology, but it was a start. It was a crack in the wall of anger and denial that Clara had built around herself. Olivia wrote back, her letter filled with a mix of sadness and hope. She told Clara that she loved her and that she hoped she would use this time in jail to reflect on her choices and to make a change for the better. She didn't know what the future held for their relationship, but she hoped that one day they could find a way to rebuild their bond based on honesty and trust. The ending of their story was far from neatly tied up, but for the first time in a long time, Olivia felt a sense of peace. She had made a difficult decision, one that had significant consequences, but she had done what she believed was right. Her sister was in jail, a stark and painful reality, but perhaps this was the only way for Clara to finally face the consequences of her actions and to have a chance at a better future. Olivia knew that her own life had been irrevocably changed by these events, but she also knew that she would emerge from this experience stronger and more resilient. She had learned a harsh lesson about family and trust, but she had also discovered her own inner strength and her ability to make difficult choices when faced with adversity. As she looked out at the city skyline from her small rented room, Olivia felt a sense of quiet determination. The future was uncertain, but she was ready to face it, one step at a time. She would rebuild her life, and she would hold on to the hope that one day her sister would find her way back to her.